Something happened inside the Cleveland Browns organization this week that nobody saw coming. A revelation dropped by insider Mary Kay Cabot has sent shockwaves through the NFL world. Not because it exposed some hidden statistic or leaked a new scheme, but because it revealed how the Browns are actually thinking about Shedeur Sanders behind closed doors. And once you hear it, you start to realize this isn't just a quarterback story. It's a psychological experiment unfolding inside one of the league's most unpredictable franchises. Fans assumed the Browns were simply evaluating Shedeur's arm talent, his decision-making, maybe his ability to extend plays under pressure. But Mary Kay didn't talk about any of that first. Instead, she hinted at something deeper, something almost uncomfortably personal. She peeled back the curtain on a strategy the Browns are quietly running on their young quarterback, a strategy built not on film study or stats, but on controlling mindset, on shaping hunger, on deliberately keeping him on edge. Think about that for a second. In a league where teams will do anything to protect a young quarterback's confidence, the Browns are taking a completely different route. They're not giving him security. They're not giving him comfort. They're not even giving him a guarantee beyond 1 week at a time. And Mary Kay's comments reveal that this isn't accidental. It's intentional. It's engineered. And that alone changes the entire conversation. Because for months, fans and analysts have been asking the same question. Does Shedeur Sanders have what it takes to be a franchise quarterback in Cleveland? But now we're learning the more important question might be, what exactly are the Browns trying to turn him into? And why does their method look so different from every other team developing a young passer? What makes this even more fascinating is the timing. The Browns' offense is falling apart. The protection is inconsistent. Receivers aren't creating separation. The run game isn't bailing anyone out. And yet, in the middle of all this chaos, the team is choosing to play psychological chess instead of simply naming Shedeur the long-term starter and letting him grow without fear. Why? What are they seeing that outsiders aren't? Mary Kay Cabot, who has covered the Browns with unmatched access for decades, made one comment that flipped the narrative on its head. She said Shedeur has a tendency to feel like he's arrived after a win. Not in a destructive way, not in a toxic way, but in a way that the Browns believe must be managed, controlled, sharpened, and suddenly, the week-to-week approach doesn't look cautious. It looks calculated. It looks like a pressure system designed to keep Shedeur hungry, focused, and slightly uncomfortable. Whether this strategy is brilliant or reckless is something we'll get into. But one thing is certain. The Browns aren't treating Shedeur like a typical rookie. They're treating him like a long-term investment who responds to challenge, not comfort. And that raises a massive question, one that will define his entire rookie season. Are the Browns building a franchise quarterback? Or are they creating something even more dangerous? From the outside, it might sound harmless when a coach says, he'll start next week. Fans hear that and think it's normal coach speak, a generic placeholder until the next press conference. But inside NFL buildings, wording is everything. The exact phrasing a coach uses can reveal tension, uncertainty, or a strategy the public isn't supposed to notice. And in Cleveland, Kevin Stefanski's choice to avoid calling Shedeur Sanders the starter going forward has caught the attention of every insider who understands how these teams operate. This isn't the language of a franchise ready to hand over the keys. This is the language of a staff that wants a player to feel the weight of every snap. It's a linguistic pressure valve tight enough to keep him alert, loose enough to avoid committing too early, and precise enough that everyone hears it but only a few understand what it means. When Stefanski says, he'll start next week, he's not just describing the depth chart, he's shaping Shedeur's psychological environment. That phrase tells Sanders that nothing is guaranteed. It tells the locker room that he still has something to earn. It tells the media that the story is not settled. And most importantly, it tells Shedeur himself that one good performance doesn't lock anything in. The seat is warm, not secure. For a rookie, that message hits differently. It doesn't just motivate, it unsettles, sharpens, and forces the mind to stay in survival mode rather than celebration mode. And according to Mary Kay Cabot, that's exactly what the Browns want right now. What makes this approach even more intriguing is how unusual it is for a franchise in Cleveland's situation. Most teams desperate for stability crave a long-term answer. They want to calm the waters, not stir them. They usually announce their young quarterback confidently to build rhythm and continuity. But the Browns aren't doing that. Instead, they're building a weekly challenge, a recurring psychological test disguised as a routine press update. They refuse to let Shedeur relax into the role, and that's a choice with intention behind it. Not a mistake. Not an oversight. A strategy. Mary Kay hinted at this when she emphasized that Shedeur can sometimes give off the vibe of having arrived after a win. It's not arrogance, it's confidence. But the Browns don't want that confidence to plateau. They want it to stay hungry, slightly agitated, never satisfied. And the best way to control a competitor like Shedeur is through language. You don't have to threaten a benching. You don't have to make dramatic statements. You just adjust a sentence, remove a long-term label, keep the timeline short, refuse to offer permanence. Players feel those small details more than fans realize. Inside NFL buildings, week-to-week language is usually reserved for temporary backups, injury replacements, or veterans nearing the end of their careers, not rookies who just showed flashes of legitimate franchise-level talent. The fact that the Browns are applying it here suggests the team believes Shedeur responds better under pressure than comfort. They're cultivating urgency, not stability. And whether that turns into brilliance or backfires completely will depend on how Shedeur channels that uncertainty in the weeks to come. Before anyone can make a fair judgment about Shedeur Sanders, you have to look at the reality he's walking into every single week. The truth is brutally simple. The Cleveland Browns offense isn't just struggling, it's malfunctioning on a fundamental level. This is the kind of offensive environment where even elite quarterbacks look ordinary, and ordinary quarterbacks look unplayable. It's the type of situation where a rookie isn't just learning the NFL, he's surviving it. Start with the offensive line, the unit that is supposed to be a quarterback's lifeline. In Cleveland right now, that lifeline is frayed. Protection collapses quickly, especially up the middle, where pressure destroys timing before routes can even develop. Defensive lines aren't being challenged, they're feasting. When a rookie quarterback is forced to dodge pressure immediately after the snap, he's not reading defenses or building rhythm. He's escaping. He's reacting. He's improvising on nearly every play. And that's not how you evaluate long-term potential. That's how you judge survival instincts. Then there's the receiving core, a group that should be Shedeur's safety net, but instead has become a weekly liability. Separation is inconsistent. Routes don't look sharp. Timing breaks down because the windows aren't there. And the Browns' supposed number one receiver, Jerry Jeudy, has become one of the most damaging variables in the entire offense. 9 drops, missed opportunities, and game-changing fumbles aren't just stats, they're drive killers. They are momentum breakers. They erase the good a quarterback does and replace it with chaos. And when the quarterback is a rookie, those mistakes echo louder, because every throw is being scrutinized, every read is being critiqued, every decision is being tied to his future. But it gets worse. Because when Jeudy isn't dropping passes, he's creating drama, sideline arguments, visible frustration, body language that radiates negativity. These aren't minor inconveniences. They're distractions. They drain energy from an offense already dealing with protection breakdowns and inconsistent play calling. A rookie quarterback needs stability, someone pulling him up, not dragging him down. Instead, Shedeur gets emotional volatility from the guy the front office expected to be his primary weapon. This isn't an offense that nurtures a young passer. It's one that tests him. It forces him into high-pressure situations with minimal support, then demands he perform flawlessly to overcome everyone else's mistakes. And that's why Mary Kay Cabot and other insiders repeatedly emphasize how difficult it is to judge any quarterback in this environment. You could drop Patrick Mahomes into this offense, and you'd still see misfires, stalled drives, rushed throws, and constant pressure. You could clone Tom Brady in his prime, and he'd be yelling at receivers who can't separate and linemen who miss their assignments. So when Shedeur Sanders steps onto the field and still manages to make NFL-level throws, stand tall under pressure, and keep the offense functional despite everything collapsing around him, it says more than his stat line ever could. It reveals traits, mental toughness, accuracy under duress, natural instinct that can't be taught. And that's exactly why the Browns' strategy becomes so fascinating. Because if you want to know whether Shedeur is special, you have to ask one simple question. How is he succeeding at all in a situation where almost no one else could? For weeks, fans have argued back and forth about Shedeur Sanders. Is he ready? Is he raw? Is he overrated? Or is he the one bright spot in a broken offense? But then Mary Kay Cabot, someone who has covered this team longer than some players have been alive, made a statement that cut straight through all the noise. She didn't talk about potential. She didn't talk about maybes. She talked about traits. Real traits. The kind that define quarterbacks who last in this league. And what she pointed out wasn't generic praise. It wasn't the usual good arm, mobile, promising upside fluff you hear about rookies. She was specific, surgical, intentional. She highlighted the qualities that NFL evaluators drool over the ones that can't be coached, can't be taught, can't be faked. She started with his accuracy, and not the kind measured in a clean pocket during a preseason game. She's talking about the elite-level accuracy that shows up when everything is falling apart, when the pocket collapses, when timing breaks down, when a receiver isn't where he's supposed to be, and the quarterback still places the ball exactly where it needs to go. That's not normal. That's the difference between an NFL thrower and an NFL quarterback. One can launch the ball, the other can put it on a moving target in chaos. Shedeur is showing the latter. Then she mentioned his touch, a trait that only the top-tier quarterbacks ever master. Touch is what allows a quarterback to layer the ball over a linebacker and under a safety. It allows him to throw a pass the receiver can catch in stride without breaking momentum. It separates reckless arm strength from controlled precision. When Cabot said he has a really nice touch on the ball, she wasn't talking about aesthetics. She was talking about the subtle mechanical consistency that takes years to develop. The fact that Shedeur already has it? That's rare. But the most important phrase she used was the one that gets thrown around too casually. The it factor. Most people can't define it. Coaches, scouts, analysts, they all try. But the truth is simple. You know it when you see it. And Mary Kay is saying she sees it. The calmness, the body language, the belief that when the game gets tight, something good is going to happen because the guy under center has that presence, that control, that gravity. A team can feel that. A locker room responds to it. And insiders don't use the term lightly. She also highlighted his ability to evade the rush, which is more than athleticism. Many athletic quarterbacks run themselves into trouble. Shedeur avoids trouble while still keeping his eyes downfield. He doesn't panic. He doesn't drop his gaze. He resets. He extends the play without abandoning the structure. That's what veteran quarterbacks learn after a decade. Shedeur is doing it now, behind an offensive line that gives him almost no margin for error. So when Mary Kay says Shedeur might actually be a winning quarterback in the NFL, she isn't guessing. She's evaluating. She's recognizing that despite the dysfunctional offense around him, he's displaying traits found in actual franchise players. Not backups, not placeholders, not experiments. And that's why the Browns' psychological strategy becomes so intriguing. Because when a young quarterback flashes this kind of talent under these conditions, the question isn't whether he can succeed. The question is whether the Browns can shape him or accidentally hold him back. The deeper you look into Cleveland's handling of Shedeur Sanders, the clearer it becomes that this isn't about football mechanics. It's about mindset. The Browns aren't treating Shedeur like a typical rookie who needs reassurance and gradual confidence building. Instead, they're using a strategy almost no other franchise dares to try with a young quarterback. Controlled discomfort. Mary Kay Cabot hinted at this when she revealed that Shedeur sometimes gives off the sense of having arrived after a win. Not cockiness, just a natural confidence. But in Cleveland's eyes, confidence can be a double-edged sword. Too much comfort, too early, and a quarterback might loosen his edge. Too much security, too soon, and the hunger that drives growth might fade. So the Browns are stepping in, not by criticizing him, not by limiting his opportunities, but by withholding permanence. That's what the week-to-week language accomplishes. It tells Shedeur, you earned this week, now earn the next one. It keeps him chasing something instead of settling into something. It frames every practice as a test, every rep as proof, every mistake as something that could cost him a start. Not the job entirely, but the right to hold it without question. And for someone wired like Shedeur, someone who has spent years sharpening himself through challenge, that uncertainty might be the very thing that ignites him. Pressure doesn't break competitors like him. It sharpens them. The Browns know this. They're betting on it. But psychological strategies are fragile. Push the right amount, and a player elevates. Push too far, and doubt creeps in. The Browns believe they've found the balance, a motivational sweet spot between opportunity and insecurity. Whether that balance holds is the risk. But the intention is unmistakable. They want Shedeur hungry, not comfortable, driven, not satisfied, pushed, not praised. For every analyst who praises the Browns' psychological strategy, there's another who warns that this approach is playing with fire. Because while pressure can sharpen a competitor, it can also chip away at confidence in ways that aren't visible until it's too late. And when the quarterback is a rookie, navigating one of the most dysfunctional offenses in the NFL, the margin for error gets even smaller. The argument against Cleveland's week-to-week handling of Shedeur Sanders starts with something simple. Quarterbacks need stability. Not comfort, not ego, stroking just a foundation they can trust. A young passer has to know the organization believes in him enough to let him grow through mistakes, not punish him for them. Some of the league's greatest success stories came from coaches who said, "This is your team. You're our guy. Go play." That assurance doesn't create complacency. It creates freedom. Look around the league. When Josh Allen was raw and inconsistent, the Bills didn't evaluate him week to week. They committed. When Trevor Lawrence struggled early, Jacksonville didn't dangle the job in front of him. They invested in him. Even Patrick Mahomes, before becoming Patrick Mahomes, was nurtured with intentional stability behind Alex Smith until it was time to take over. In every case, the quarterback took off because the organization removed fear from the equation. Fear is the key word here. When a quarterback feels replaceable, even subtly, it changes how he plays. He becomes cautious. He double-checks, reads. He refuses to take necessary risks. He worries that one interception could shift the narrative. And once that mindset takes root, confidence erodes in small, silent ways. Never publicly, never obviously, but internally where it matters most. The Browns' offense already forces Shedeur to play under extreme pressure. He knows the O-line might collapse. He knows receivers might drop key passes. He knows the run game might stall. Layering job insecurity on top of all that creates a mental stack that even veterans struggle with. The concern isn't that Shedeur will break. It's that he will internalize mistakes as personal failures rather than natural growing pains. That kind of self-blame can stunt development more than any blown assignment or bad play call. There's also a practical risk. A quarterback who constantly feels evaluated plays tight. Instead of throwing with authority, he throws to avoid mistakes. Instead of trusting his instincts, he hesitates. Instead of scanning the full field, he locks into safer routes. None of this helps the team. None of this helps development. It creates a timid version of a quarterback who was drafted for his aggression, precision, and fearless play style. And then, there's the issue of leadership optics. How does a quarterback rally a locker room if the organization refuses to publicly crown him the leader? Teammates may quietly wonder whether he's the long-term guy. Veterans may hold back emotionally because they expect the depth chart to shift again. Leadership requires clarity. Week-to-week evaluation creates ambiguity. This doesn't mean the Browns are wrong. It simply means the risk is real. Push a quarterback too hard, and you might accidentally create hesitation instead of hunger. The line between sharpening a competitor and undermining one is razor thin. The Browns believe they're walking that line with precision. But the counter-argument is simple. Sometimes, the strongest move isn't pressure, it's belief. There's one factor in this entire evaluation that nobody can escape, no matter how talented Shedeur Sanders looks, or how deeply the Browns analyze him. Jerry Jeudy is warping the data. When your supposed no, one receiver is struggling this badly, it becomes impossible to get a clean, honest read on any quarterback. And Jeudy's issues aren't small or occasional, they're constant, drive-altering, momentum-killing moments that turn promising possessions into disasters. A drop here isn't just a drop. It wipes out a well-timed throw, kills a rhythm the quarterback is trying to build, forces a punt, and hands the defense the burden again. A fumble doesn't just cost yards, it erases confidence. And when it happens repeatedly, week after week, the quarterback starts playing a different game in his head. He begins wondering whether a perfectly placed ball will even be caught. He starts hesitating on timing routes. He stops trusting the matchups that should be favorable. And then there's the sideline behavior, the frustration, the visible tension, the outbursts that cameras love and coaches hate. A young quarterback shouldn't have to manage the emotional volatility of his top weapon. That's supposed to be the steady, veteran presence who helps him grow, not the source of public drama that makes national headlines. Instead of serving as Shedeur's security blanket, Jeudy has become a weekly variable, sometimes invisible, sometimes disruptive, rarely dependable. This is why insiders like Mary Kay Cabot constantly bring up Jeudy when discussing Shedeur's development. Because how can you judge accuracy when the target drops the ball? How can you judge decision-making when receivers can't separate? How can you judge leadership when the locker room dynamics shift every time one player melts down? It's simple. You can't. Not cleanly, not fairly, not yet. And that's why Cleveland's evaluation is more complex than anyone outside the building realizes. If you really want to understand why the Browns' psychological strategy is so fascinating, you have to stop looking at Shedeur Sanders as just a rookie quarterback and start looking at him as a human being shaped by years of expectation, pressure, and doubt. Because Shedeur's journey to Cleveland wasn't smooth, and it definitely wasn't predictable. It was built on being underestimated, questioned, and pushed into situations where he had to prove himself again and again long before the Browns ever entered the picture. The dropped draft stock is the first layer of this chip on his shoulder. For months before the draft, analysts talked about Shedeur as if he were a lock for the first or second round. His pedigree, production, and athletic traits backed that up, yet he sat there and watched quarterback after quarterback go before him. He watched teams pass on him without hesitation. He watched his name slide down the board in real time, publicly, painfully, and with millions of people witnessing every moment. That kind of fall isn't forgotten. It doesn't fade. It settles into a competitor's mind and becomes fuel. And then there's the weight of legacy. Being Deion Sanders' son isn't a privilege. It's a spotlight. It brings expectations that no rookie quarterback can escape. People don't see Shedeur the way they see other rookies. They see him as an extension of a Hall of Fame personality, someone who has been trained, coached, and groomed since childhood. That creates pressure most quarterbacks never experience. Every good play becomes, of course he did look who his dad is. Every mistake becomes, maybe he's not like his dad after all. There's no middle ground. Everything is amplified. But here's the most interesting part. Shedeur doesn't run from pressure. He feeds on it. At Colorado, under some of the harshest media scrutiny in recent college football history, he didn't crack. He sharpened. He played some of the best football of his life, while being the center of a national conversation every single week. That's not normal. That's someone who finds clarity in chaos, not fear. Which is why the Browns' week-to-week approach hits differently when applied to him. For many rookies, this kind of uncertainty would create anxiety. For Shedeur, it becomes another challenge, another moment to prove someone wrong, another opportunity to remind the football world that doubting him is a mistake. The Browns think they're motivating him through pressure. What they might not realize is that Shedeur arrived with pressure already stitched into his identity. It's not new to him. It's not uncomfortable. It's familiar. And this is where the situation becomes complicated. Because if Shedeur is already burning with internal motivation, draft day disappointment, legacy expectations, national scrutiny, how much pressure does he actually need? How much more can you stack before it becomes counterproductive? That's the part no insider can predict. It's the delicate balance between fueling a competitor and overwhelming one. Shedeur's history suggests he thrives under weight, but even the strongest competitors need moments of stability, moments where the organization says, "We believe in you, and here's your runway." Right now, Cleveland is giving him fire. The question is whether they'll know when it's time to give him something else. When you step back and look at everything Mary Kay Cabot's revelation, the week-to-week language, the broken offense, the Jeudy variable, and Shedeur's own internal fire, you realize this isn't just a quarterback battle. It's a psychological experiment playing out in real time. Cleveland isn't simply evaluating a rookie. They're shaping him, pushing him, and testing how far his competitive instinct can stretch before it snaps or transforms into something unstoppable. The Browns believe pressure will forge him. Others believe stability would unleash him. And both sides have compelling arguments. But one thing is undeniable. Despite the chaos around him, Shedeur Sanders is showing traits that don't come around often: accuracy, under fire, rare poise, natural leadership, and that unexplainable it factor insiders recognize instantly. Whether the Browns' strategy becomes a masterclass or a mistake will define not only the rest of this season, but the future of the franchise. They may be creating a star, they may be creating a monster, or they may be discovering that Shedeur was already one the moment he walked into the building. Now it's your turn. Is Cleveland playing this right? Or playing with fire? Drop your thoughts below.